Good morning and welcome to the March 15th City Council Workshop. We have Councilors Fazer and King are absent at the moment. And first up on our agenda today is a discussion about the Visitor Center with the Chamber of Commerce. Aaron, is Josie?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Josie. Okay. Josie is here from the Chamber.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to give a recap of the Visitor Center. And today I'm actually going to dive a little bit more into the history, the creation of the Visitor Center, but also give you a review of our 2020 and then our average numbers. So back in 1996, the City and Chamber of Commerce actually came together. And we really had a central idea to bring a visible location to welcome visitors and boost our tourism economy. Excuse me. And it was decided that we really wanted to build this visitor center. So the Chamber of Commerce actually paid for the full building. So we actually own the building, and then the city owns Caveman Park. And so I hope all of you have been to the Visitor Center, but it's definitely a beautiful area. It's very inviting, very welcoming. As you can see, we have a nice park area for people to have picnics, bring your dogs, get some exercise. We have the historic cavemen. We also have one of the beautiful evergreen bears. It's our Russian sister bear, and we actually just got that remodeled. And we have electric car charger station, and we really just continue to change and make it even more beautiful and inviting. So we really have two different agreements with you. So we have the visitor contract, which is you give us the $72,000 to maintain the visitor center, but also we have a lease agreement. So with us, we built the building. We provided all the funds through donors and fundraising. So we own the building, and then you allow us to put it on Caveman Park. So under this partnership, though, the Chamber maintains the entire Caveman Park. We do all the landscaping, the security. We bring in our own private security. We pay for all the utilities of the full building, all the maintenance, upkeep, irrigation. And also under the visitor contract, we staff the center and provide the excellent customer service and meet all the items we have to in the visitor agreement. So in order to do that, we brought on Art Dyer. He started with us in June of 2011, and he serves as our customer service representative. And he really oversees the entire operation of the Visitor Center and manages our volunteers. But we had him go to the next level. He received a customer service certification from Portland Community College. He has attended numerous tourism conferences, trainings, seminars, and he also went through the Travel Oregon Q training program. So he is very qualified to run the Visitor Center. So also, as you know, we also have volunteers, and they put in almost 5,000 hours every year. And they really, most of them have lived here their entire lives, or they chose to retire here. So as you can see, in November, we did a very nice spread of the different 12 active volunteers we had at that time. And you can see Elsa, she's been with us for 25 years. Flora has been with us for 20 years. So they're committed to your community. They're experts. And then Dean is actually our newest volunteer, and he's here today. And he has been with us over a year now. So once we get volunteers actually on board with us, they stay for us a very long time. and they're very dedicated. So we split our volunteers up in different shifts during the week. So like Dean, he works on the Monday shift, and he's there for about 4 hours. And we've really made sure that they know what our community has to offer. We also usually do certified training with them. We used to do it through Travel Oregon. We take them out on tours and do tourism outings. The last one that we did was before COVID hit, is we took them up to Wolf Creek Historic Hotel. And they got to have lunch, they did a ghost tour, and just really learned about everything our community has to offer. And like I said before, if you combine all their hours, it's over 5,000 hours that they're really giving back to the city. They just want to help and make our community a better place. So I did want to go through all the different advantages the North Visitor Center has. So like I said, the chamber has a very structured system in place, and we've always made sure it's very professionally managed through different trainings, certifications, and then we have staff and volunteers. And also you have to think about, the partnership that we've had together since 1996, where we really got together and built that building to be a visitor center. If you really looked at it, the chamber does not need that large of a building. Half of it is the visitor center. We also have adequate RV and bus parking, which the Downtown Welcome Center does not. So if there's a big bus coming in, they always come to our facility, and we get tons of bus tours, RVs, and then of course just families traveling too. We also have access to clean and managed bathrooms. So, despite everything, we've always continued to operate these bathrooms, and so many people stop. They're on their way on I-5 and they stop to go to the bathroom, but then we have the opportunity to tell them about all the amazing things in our community. So we're always recommending restaurants, go to Hellgate, Wildlife Images, go downtown. So we're constantly pushing people to either stay the night, they might not have done that, extend their stay, or at least go downtown and experience our community. We also have a large quantity of information, brochures, souvenirs, and gifts. And a big thing that draws lots of people is we're home to the historic caveman. And like I said before, we have a beautiful area for families to have picnics, walk their dogs, get some exercise, and bring their kiddos out. But the huge thing is our location. We're right off of I-5. We're right next to hotels. And as you can see, the north side is up and coming. We have so many amazing things on there, and it's a really big draw. I mean, even In-N-Out is right there. And whether we like it or not, they bring in a lot of people to our community. And I did already mention the electric car charger station. And if you look at the numbers, we are the main visitor center. We average over 2,000 more visitors than the Downtown Welcome Center. And I have to say, I think they're both very valuable to our community. So besides just doing the visitor center, we do a lot of additional tourism activities. So we produce a lot of other publications from an Eat, Stay, and Play, which lists all the restaurants and hotels and attractions in our area. And I do want to make it known, we are always promoting the entire community. We are not just promoting chamber members. We also put together the county and city map with the Daily Courier. We put out the chamber profile. We create a whole brew list, winery list. We have tons of brochures on caveman history. And we're the ones who make lots of the community pamphlets and print them in-house. And we hand out lots of caveman souvenirs, and we also do sell them. We also manage the top community calendar. We list every event happening in Josephine County, and it's free to put those events on our calendar. We also, if you go into our lobby, we have a video that plays that really showcases our entire county. And then also, this is more on the Chamber of Commerce side, but we put on Concerts in the Park, which is a 6-week concert series that's free for the entire community. We also do Wine Stroll, Tap Walk, and we really, we go to all the different meetings and we represent tourism at the stakeholder meetings and really just promote our community whenever we have a chance. So this is just kind of a recap of what I already talked about with the different other publications we do. We also do the monthly newsletter and weekly newsletter, but those are really on the Chamber of Commerce side. So one thing I really wanted to touch on is, the caveman. Some people love him, some people hate him. But no matter what, they draw people to our community. We get so many people that stop just to get a picture with the caveman. And it's our opportunity to then visit with them and tell them, please come downtown, come try our restaurant, stay the night. And people are really interested in the caveman. And if you look him up, he's number 12 on top things to do in TripAdvisor, number 9 on top sites at Vacation Ideas, and they even did a feature in Roadside America. And we do get lots of the tour buses. They all stop there, they all get out and take the picture. And so this is just a write-up. We did a really nice one when we did the Caveman Bridge dedication, and we threw in the caveman history. And this was in our chamber profile that came out in 2019. So now I wanted to get into the average numbers. So I'm going to show you 2020 numbers, but I want you to keep in mind, 2020 was a hard hit, and we actually, as the visitor center, had a mandatory shutdown from the governor's orders. So on a typical year, we see about 7,500 visitors. Now, this is strictly out-of-town visitors. We're not counting any locals, any chamber business. This is strictly out-of-town visitors. We also get up to 4,000 calls. We do relocation and visitor packets, probably about 1,000 each, that we mail out. We do have lots of people that come in and just request one, but these are the ones that we actually mail out. For our website and calendar views, which is the free commuting calendar, we have over 2 million people visit it. And then we also do event packets. So if someone's doing a conference or a little get-together and they're bringing outside visitors, we'll create packets for them. So like District 7 just approached us and they're going to do a conference in the summer. So we're going to build 600 packets for them. And then we do get the thousands of locals that come into our office. And lots of times they're bringing family from outside in and want to get some ideas. And then, of course, the chamber is really an information hub. We're always the go-to place if you have a question, need a resource. We're always there. We sell park passes, give information, and just we're here for the community. So I wanted to talk about the COVID implications. So we're a little different since we're a private nonprofit, 501c6. If an office had to be closed under the governor's mandate, we fell into that. So in April and May, November and December of 2020, we had to have our doors locked. And at first in April and May, they didn't even want you in the building. So we had to transfer all of our calls to our cell phones and answering them that way. And then also, of course, we answered emails. And we still sent out all the relocation and visitor packets. And then in 2021, of course, January, February, and March, we were also closed. So we just finally got to reopen today to the public and bring back our volunteers. Of course, we also made the option open. If anyone needed anything, we're open by appointment, and we tried to help as much as we could, but we did have to follow the governor's mandate. So So I also wanted to point out in these numbers, as you're looking at them, there was a huge change in 2014 and 2015, especially in advertising. When Experience Grants Pass took over, for some reason they stopped advertising the visitor center in any ads, website, brochures, or social media. Prior to that year, there was some city staff that actually ran the tourism side, and they were housed in the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center building. And they worked very well with us and actually put the visitor center in lots of ads and advertised us. So since then, we had a significant drop of visitors, about 2,500 just in that year when we were no longer advertised. And so it really came down because of our central location, our visibility, and our Chamber of Commerce recognition that we still have visitors. Because if you look on Travel Grants Pass now, we're not listed anywhere, and we're not promoted. And you'll also find the Caveman is not promoted, and neither is Concerts in the Park. So this has made a huge difference on who's coming to the visitor center. So now we'll get into the actual numbers for 2020. And I'll be honest, these aren't pretty. We did not get the visitors we usually do. This was a very small portion. As you can see, we're only about 2,200 of in-person. But you have to think, 5 months we were actually closed, only by appointment. So it did make a huge difference. Even our phone calls were down. And we do know that people were visiting our community, but maybe they didn't feel safe coming in the visitor center when it was actually open. When they did come by, we found that they were doing all types of outdoor activities, which was great. They're coming to Southern Oregon for that experience. Even our webpage views were significantly down because there was no events happening in Josephine County. And that is the main draw, as they're coming to our community calendar. We did still send out a few relocation and vacation packets, but nothing near to our usual. And then we started the year off with one event, and then after that, every event was canceled, so we didn't make any conference packets. So I just kind of want to explain the difference between the visitors we get and the visitors the downtown center gets. And we each play a very crucial role. So we are getting the travelers that are going on I-5. Usually they're probably not coming to stay in Grants Pass. They're traveling through, they're looking for a bathroom break, they're looking to book their trip later. And so we're actually getting the opportunity to showcase what Grants Pass has to offer. And they might decide to stay the night that night, they might book a trip later, but anyway, they'll hopefully come back by knowing what we have to offer. And if they are looking to do, if they have some time, we actually have the opportunity to push them downtown, push them to restaurants, to Hellgate, Wildlife Images, to the caves. We do also find a lot of time they're just coming through Grants Pass to get to the coast or the caves. But at least they stop by us so we can showcase what they could do here. And I just wanted to also reiterate this, that we have 2,000 more annually that visit the North Visitor Center compared to the Downtown Welcome Center. But the Downtown Welcome Center is very important as well, because they're also down there, and if we give them more options, they're going to spend more money. So both of them are very important to our community. So I was asked to give a breakdown of where the $72,000 goes to. So I don't know if you guys can read it. Yeah, okay, you can read it pretty well. So now this is also in COVID times, so I'll kind of explain the difference when we're not in COVID times, what we're spending some of the money on. But so we all spend about $3,500 on different advertising, marketing, about those different pamphlets we make, the Eat, Stay, and Play, some of the souvenirs we give out. For the equipment lease, this would be like the printer and copier and those type of equipment. Of course, it's required that we have insurance. So this is basically our insurance split between the visitor center and chamber. And you'll find that's a lot. We split out the expenses. So chamber is paying some, and then the visitor is paying a portion. And that's the same thing with the landscape and janitorial, so that you have to think about this is cleaning the office, this is the irrigation, the landscape company, all that maintenance. Office expense is about $1,100, and that's just, different supplies to send out the mailings and that type of thing, and make sure our office is running efficiently. So payroll, this is about $37,000. And this is really covering Art Dyer, who I mentioned before, was our customer service rep. He is a part-time employee, so it's his full salary. It's a portion of Sue Brown, who was our accounting and business manager. It's only about 30% of hers. And, she really, when Art wasn't there, she's the one who assisted the customers. Of course, usually the volunteers are the ones who they interact with, but we always have to make sure there's a staff person on site because of liability and those type of things. And then it pays for a small portion of Christy Swafford, who is our events and programs. She runs all of the community calendar. So if you really look at this, we're not paying that much on staff. And you're really getting a full team working on, the visitor center, because if someone's not available, I might be up there helping a customer. I might be at a stakeholder meeting talking about the visitor center. So you're getting really a staff of 5 working on this for $37,000, which trying to get someone to run a visitor center for that much money is going to be significantly hard. And then, of course, the postage is about $1,800. This is sending out all the relocation of visitor requests, and we do get different letters asking, and we do respond to them. We have kids do different projects at school, so we'll respond to them too. And then printing, just anything we have to print in-house, repairs and maintenance. So this is a little bit higher than usual because our heat pump, so we have 2 different heat pumps. One is for the chamber, one is for the visitor center, and the visitor center did go out this year, which we found it was back from 1996, so it was definitely about time. So we did have to replace that. So this is a little bit larger than we usually would spend on repairs and maintenance. And then we hire our own private security concierge because you would be surprised how much traffic we get up there, that we constantly have to move people on. They're drinking on our lawn, they're doing drugs. We constantly are picking up trash and needles and everything. So it's very important that we have our own private security. Staff and volunteer development. This is only $300 because of COVID. We usually send them to different trainings, conferences, do tourism outings, that type of thing. But because of COVID, we were not able to do that. So usually it would be up to like $2,000. And then telephone. This is just for our telephone system. It's split half between visitor center and half between chamber. Travel and mileage is very small. Usually it would be larger if we were doing tourism outings and actually visiting sites in person. Utilities. And then for a volunteer appreciation promotion, we usually have a big dinner and really thank the volunteers. And this year we actually got them gifts, gift certificates, little food items. So we did a little different because of COVID. And so usually, we're about even. We're not making money off this contract. We're putting it all back into the visitor center or back out in the community. So we try to be very tight in our budget. And I hope we've never come back to you and asked for more money. We always make sure that we're right on budget. So I just kind of want to talk about the relationships. The Chamber of Commerce is very involved in tourism, our economy, anything economic development. So we're always at the different stakeholders meetings. And we already have the relationships with, the different tourism businesses, the attractions, restaurants, hotels. And if you look at our chamber membership, probably more than 40% are in the tourism industry. So it means a lot to us. And these are just some different pictures. We were very active in the wildfire recovery. We've turned everything virtual, and we just keep on moving and try to be a positive image in our community. So I hope you know that we want to continue this partnership, and we have 2 different agreements with you. So you really have to take both of those into consideration. And I think we've done a very good job running the visitor center. We've done it very professionally. We've kept within budget, and we provide very friendly customer service and promote our community. And we are the gateway to our community. So we hope we can continue this, and I would take any questions you have.
Thank you, Josie. Questions? I see Valerie.
Yes, can you tell me how many chamber members are involved, businesses are involved with the chamber out there?
Right now, we have about 550.
Okay, so there's approximately 550, and that's in Josephine County as well as Grants Pass,
Yep,
correct?
so we serve the entire county. The majority, though, are in Grants Pass.
Okay, and how much would you say the average, the amount that they pay to be a part of that chamber?
So I would say the average, so our entry level is $275, but I would say most of them pay the $525.
Other questions for Josie? Brian?
Thank you, Josie. That was great. You mentioned there at the end that we have 2 different agreements with you. Could you explain that briefly?
Yeah, so in 1996, this is where the visitor center came to life. And we have an agreement between the city and chamber that we would put our building on Caveman Park and that we would maintain your entire park for us to have our building there. So it was a joint agreement, and there's no end date on it. And we've been doing it since 1996. And then on top of that, we have the visitor's contract, which is the $72,000, where we actually run and provide you the service to operate the visitor center.
Okay. I have a couple more. Does the city get a copy of the financial report annually, like what you just described, or is that something that was just for this presentation?
So usually it's just in these presentations. We also gave them to the DMO pros when they requested it, but otherwise in our agreement it's just upon request. So anytime you want it, we would gladly give you an update.
Okay. Great. And then, without getting into too much detail, can you very broadly describe other funding sources that the chamber has?
Yeah, so, and I should probably explain, the visitor center, we treat them as separate organizations. So the contract for the $72,000 is just the visitor center. We don't move any of that money into chamber. For the chamber, the major funding comes from private membership dues. That's really and then of course, different events we do. So like the chamber profile, we make a little bit money off of that. Wine stroll, tap walk, and I'll be honest, concerts in the park is not a moneymaker. It is a break even, it's a free gift to the community, and that, the city does not sponsor concerts in the park. It's actually sponsored by businesses. So really it's membership and events is the Chamber of Commerce primary funding.
Okay. And does Art Dyer, does he do all of the volunteer coordination? Is he kind of the manager of that?
So he is the main person, but I'll be honest, when Sue Brown was there, she also helped manage them because Art actually only works 1 to 5 and then on Saturdays during the summer. So when Art's not there, we have another staff person in place. So Sue used to be that, and now it's more Christy and Linda. And then, of course, I'm the overall supervisor.
Okay, I have just one more, thanks. And this is, I'm kind of getting out ahead of things here, but I want to ask, since you're here, theoretically, could the chamber staff both visitor centers with volunteers?
Yes, and we would be open to that. We would just, yeah, we could do it. And we would probably try to get more volunteers on board, because we think that the structure we use for the visitor center works the best.
Thanks, Josie.
Rob?
Thanks, Josie. Very impressive, and what all the chamber's work is also very impressive.
Thank you.
And it's great to be reminded of that today. I just have to say, before I get into a question, that the DMO report that kind of, I really feel, belittled or belittled chambers across America and basically said they're obsolete as a form of marketing, I think it should be obvious to everyone in the room that that report may not be accurate in this case. And I think that we all need to remember that that report was one particular organization's thoughts on our chamber, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that you guys do a great job and you're very important to all of Grants Pass. I'd also like to say that even though you guys get, or we, give you get $72,000 a year, I think the chamber showed great integrity back in 2015 when you guys came out very definitively against the sales tax, which is again something City Hall wanted, but the chamber looked at that and said, even though we get your money, we can't agree with that. And I think that showed great integrity, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate it almost every day, quite frankly. So one question, it seems as though, from what you were saying, back in 2015, the city marketing, John Bowen or Experience Grants Pass, kind of, for whatever reason, I guess, separated or stopped supporting or stopped working with you guys. And I'm not sure what the deal is there. And I kind of had that feeling because, the downtown kiosk that's on the side of the Emporium building at 6th and G, you guys have that kiosk, and you have the map of the city where all the different businesses are and where the chamber is. There's a big arrow that says, go up there in the chamber. And right across the street is the downtown visitor center, and it's not even on the map. So I realized that there had to have been a real split between those two organizations because you guys didn't seem to be working together. And I guess what you said today is a little bit more of an explanation. But getting to what Brian's point was, and it was going to be my question also, is could, you guys have such expertise, you do such a good job up there, it would seem like a natural fit to have you run the downtown center as well. And I know that all the counselors saw a lot of emails. Josie sent out an email Friday asking for chamber members to speak up. And I want to tell everybody in the council that I answered every one of those emails, and not a single person who answered back when I asked them, actually, what did I say? I asked them if you had to choose, had an opinion, if it comes down to either or between the uptown or the downtown visitor centers with Josie running either, which would you choose and why? Not a single person who answered back wanted to choose. They said that they both were necessary and they didn't want to get into that. They realized that the council has a really tough decision on this or on all the budget issues. And I also asked everyone in my response, where else would you suggest finding $70,000 in our budget? And not a single person wanted to go there either. So the point that I'm making is that while there's a lot of people, and actually one of the answers specifically said the reason that he wrote was because he just wanted to make sure that we understood the value and his opinion that the North Visitor Center was a really valuable asset. But he, again, was not going to choose between the two. So that's basically the feedback that I got from everyone who sent us emails. They didn't necessarily want to choose or feel that they didn't want to be involved in that because they felt they both were valuable. So there was one other point that I wanted to make. Oh, so the total funding then for the chamber is roughly 250,000 a year from the memberships? Is that about right?
It's probably about 300,000.
300,000, okay. Thank you. And actually, one other, it's not a question for you. I just want to make the point, when we're talking about numbers, north and south, I think pretty much everyone acknowledges that the downtown center has terrible signage. We don't have a 20-foot caveman out front of it. They didn't even have a sign, a sidewalk sign out in front until recently. So I'm sure the numbers downtown, if the chamber to take it over and do a really good job with signage, the wayfinding signage that DJ was mentioning and some others, the downtown center would actually, I'm sure, draw a lot more interest. Thanks.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Rick?
Thank you, Josie. I think the chamber really does a good job, especially with the visitor center. So when you're running the whole complex there, like you said, there's two operations. You have both the chamber and the visitor center. And I realize advertising can depend on foot traffic. So in general, how many people come through the building for the Chamber of Commerce as well?
So we don't actually track that, but I would say it's probably at least 8 times per outside visitor, because you have to think about, we have tons of locals just coming in because they have a question or whatever, but then we have our membership traffic, we have tons of committee meetings, we also let other community organizations use our conference room. So you're getting, I mean, we're always having people come in and through, so there's a lot of people.
So do you also see that when a chamber member comes through, they have friends or family and visitors coming into town, they will actually participate or take some of the visitor information?
Oh yeah, we have tons of people, even like new members. They've probably never been in the visitor center, but they came to do chamber business. So they're always grabbing all kinds of brochures, and we actually even do new member buckets. We call them because we get farmers building supply buckets, and we fill it with all kinds of brochures because we know that even though you live here, you might not have explored your area. So yes, it's, you know, tons of people we're reaching. We're just not counting it in these numbers because we've been asked to count only out of town visitors.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Any other questions for Josie? Thanks for coming down and giving us
Thank
a
you.
presentation, Josie, and
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time today. And we appreciate that we are staying on track of our own time today so far. Next up, we have a discussion about public restrooms.
Thank you, Mayor. So good morning. I have a brief presentation for you to bring back before you the discussion of public restrooms. We have talked about this a couple of times in the past, and it is to evaluate cost estimates and potential locations for new public restroom installations, and provide some additional information about types of restrooms that could be installed. So on November 9th, 2020, the current public restroom practices and other cost implications were discussed. COVID had really challenged our ability to use the restrooms. Plus, at that time, Community Development Director Glover had reported extensive vandalism to the downtown restrooms that was ongoing and hard to manage. And at that time, we had discussed using porta potties, and porta potties were deployed and used throughout the last couple of months. They are cleaned twice a day, and that estimated cost is close to $41,900 per year. So it is fairly significant to run those porta potties. And so council asked us to go back and look at permanent installations, possibly looking at Portland Loo or San Francisco style, vandal-proof style, or looking at constructing permanent type restrooms from a block construction perspective. So we've worked with contractors at the visitor center, and those bathrooms now are back online. I think we reported that right after the start of the year. So you can go into the visitor center and use that restroom. You pick up a key from the attendant. It's not just open like it was where you could walk in the back door and go in the bathroom. We've put a little bit more control on it, and the vandalism has stopped. So the restroom is being used, but we're not having the same issues that we were seeing before, so that's a great plus. We also have reported a couple of locations for you, and this map is in your packet, which might be a little bit easier to read. I'm going to pull out the laser pen. We had talked about a couple of potential locations for adding public restrooms. One, of course, here at the Visitor Center. The other being the Grasshopper parking lot, which we felt was a great location. Public restroom there would serve multiple purposes. Not only is it still immediately adjacent to downtown, but with Growers Market and other events that happen in this area, that would be a great location. I added these two up here, and we're going to talk about this in a couple of slides, but Josephine Community Transit is actually installing two Portland loos in conjunction with their development, and those two are going to be installed right here at 5th and E Street. The other locations that we put forward at the time and would still like input on are the other city parking lots, which are Salmon, Beaver, and Duck Lot, all of which have different pros and cons. The reason we suggest those is it's property that is owned and controlled by the city and would be easy to install a restroom in. All of which may or may not eliminate parking. That's the other key piece of that, that may be difficult to install these without eliminating one or two parking spots. So there's a few versions, as we talked about previously, and they've been appearing in various cities around the country. Portland loos, of course. We also look at the San Francisco automatic public toilets, and then typical block-type construction. So we're going to look at all three. All three are still going to be somewhat expensive to operate, and will still require a fair amount of maintenance. If we install, say, 3 of these around town, we're still going to have to pay somebody to clean those every day. You don't want them going very long. So there's a cost to that that will be ongoing. So the Portland loos, these units are open at the top and the bottom. Wade and Scott Chansey from Josephine Community Transit did meet with the Portland loo folks last week, got quite a bit more information. Even though they are open at the top and the bottom, the louvers prevent anybody from being able to see in those, even if you're trying really, really hard. You can't lay down low enough to look up, and you can't climb high enough to look down. The way that the louvers are slanted, you literally cannot see through, but you can see that there is somebody there. As soon as you enter, the lights automatically turn on, so you'll know from a public safety standpoint if somebody is in there. But because you can tell that somebody is there, it does discourage illicit use in the restrooms. The base units do cost about $95,000, with typical units and standard amenities coming in at $105,000, and that includes delivery, but not installation. Installation costs are ranging from about $50,000 to $100,000, and that depends again on how close they are to sewer and water. Several of the locations, such as the Visitor Center, would be a very inexpensive installation because sewer and water are both immediately adjacent. Growers Market parking lot, the Grasshopper lot, might be a little bit more challenging because there isn't a sewer. We'd have to go a little ways to catch the sewer line in addition to water. They have a very, very robust, proven design with prison-grade furnishings that tend to hold up to a lot of abuse. They do come in standard colors, mostly shades of gray. The reason for that is their gray coating is actually very graffiti proof. As you add different colors, their graffiti covering doesn't work as well. And so they warranty it from graffiti, I can't remember the number of years, but it was insanely long, that anything that gets put on there, you just take it off with a citrus wipe. It was pretty impressive. And they've got a lot of service in downtown Portland. The gentleman that Wade had spoken with lives right across the street from one, and during the Portland riots, it was routinely vandalized with paint, and they would try to destroy it every way they could, and it didn't. And every morning, the city crews would come out, they'd wipe the graffiti off, and it would look just like new. So it was pretty impressive. Maintenance costs do vary. What I do want to note is we did reach out to our current janitorial contract holder to find out what they would charge us to clean these. They estimated it would be close to $15 to $20 per unit per day for a single cleaning. If we wanted to go with more cleanings, that price would be less per cleaning, but more overall per day, as they were visiting them more frequently. So as I did mention, Scott Chansey at Josephine Community Transit is planning on installing 2 of these units. If we were to join up with them and the city and Josephine Community Transit were to purchase 5, they do offer a 5% discount. While that is not a huge discount, it does bring $5,000 off of the price of each, which would help with installation costs, but it is something that we could consider. It does need 110 volts. Be connected because there are lights that illuminate when you're inside. Just a simple concrete base, very straightforward installation. The ones that Scott is offering also have an outside hand washing station standard. The other options we looked at were the San Francisco self-cleaning options. These ones were coming in over $150,000 per unit. You can tell that they are a little bit more ornate. They are gorgeous units, but they probably are not quite right from a price standpoint. They also have a very robust and proven design. They've held up very, very well. They also have the same ongoing maintenance issues potentially. And then the last thing we want to talk about are block buildings. We could look at building similar buildings to we have in the parks. And I'm using the larger restroom size. That's the last cost we have just to get an idea of the square footage. The restroom only portions would be about $85,000 to construct. Again, $50,000 for utilities depending on where they're at, with a total estimated cost of about $135,000. Some potential problems for these in the future could be, it's really hard to see if somebody's in a block building. You're a lot more isolated. We probably would have higher vandalism or potentially have higher vandalism in these types of restrooms. And we would definitely not want to go with the standard fixtures like I'm showing behind me here. We would want to go with the prison grade fixtures like we were showing in the Portland loos to help them hold up to that long-term vandalism. So the city did elect in 2020 to make a modification to the Urban Renewal Agency, which allocated roughly $2 million to support the downtown plaza concept, streetscape lighting, and restrooms in the downtown plaza. And this was added as an amendment to project number 5, North 6th and 7th Street corridor. What I did want to mention is that project LB 6314, which is the Downtown Restroom and Welcome Center, they had allocated $500,000 in urban renewal dollars. That money was slated to be removed this year because those modifications to the building, they were a part of the potential sale of that property to facilitate the Dutch Brothers, or not to facilitate, but if Dutch Brothers decided to develop, they might want that corner. We had allocated money to sell that property and then construct something new elsewhere. That did not occur. In talking with Director Schultz, that money has not yet been removed from the project, even though it is still slated to be removed. We could leave that money in that project and fund the public restrooms sooner than reallocated money next year or continue on with that. I just wanted to put that out as a potential option. There really is no call to action. This is at your discretion exclusively. But I did have a couple of options here that if we could get a little general direction, that would help us to get going. We could partner with Josephine Community Transit and purchase 1, 2, or 3 Portland loos. If we were to purchase 3 for future installation, and we wouldn't have to take delivery of these right away, we could place that order, get the discount, and take delivery in a year or 2. That would net us a 5% discount for all of them, including the ones for Josephine Community Transit. We could not partner and purchase any number of Portland loos and place those at locations to be determined. Staff would definitely recommend the Visitor Center. It is a great location, very central, plenty of property for it. We would also really strongly recommend the Grasshopper lot, but after that, we look forward to input on where to place those. We could also not partner and install block or wood block or wood restrooms. I realized I just walked away from the mic. And then also look at another brand of prefab. And with that, I would take questions on this topic.
Thank you, Jason. Questions? Joel?
So, Jason, could you go back to the slide that shows us the maintenance costs of what we're dealing with today?
I actually don't think I had one that had the maintenance costs today. That was in a previous.
No, you had it there.
This is the one where we talked, that's for the porta potties. That $41,000 a year is going to be for porta potties
Okay.
being cleaned twice a day.
And so if we're spending right now $42,000 a year, the present net value of that at 5% is about $800,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you carry that out a few years.
Okay, so so right now, our alternative for bathrooms downtown in present net value terms, which accounts for money over time, is $800,000. If you look at buying 3 of those other bathrooms at $150,000 apiece,
That would be an installed cost?
so
Yes.
that would be the bathroom and installation, that's $450,000.
Yeah.
And then that would then leave approximately $20,000 a year to maintain it, which according to your figures was more than adequate. When you look at what it costs to maintain the bathrooms like we have up in Portland.
Yeah, we're figuring roughly, and this is just a current estimate based on once per day need. If we find that they need more frequent cleaning, this cost would change, but
Right.
cost per day or cost per year of unit would be about $5,500 for daily cleaning.
So $15,000 versus the other one, which was what?
41, and that was for 4 units. That was for 4 porta potties cleaned twice a day.
Okay, so, and this is 15,
15 for 3 units cleaned once a day.
okay, so so you have some slack there.
Yep.
So present net value of getting those new bathrooms is roughly equivalent to what we're doing today. So then I ask you, there was the idea in your presentation, I didn't hear it today, where advertisers would, for the sake of advertising around a nice bathroom for downtown, and they would maintain the bathroom at their expense in lieu of costs for their advertising.
So that is possible, at least to recoup some of the cost. This is an example on the San Francisco option. I had one from the Portland Loo, but it looks like I cut it out of the presentation, where you could sell advertising space on there that would change out. The Portland or the San Francisco model is they are actually, it's like a franchise where somebody buys the restroom and they get money from them selling advertising. I'm not sure we have quite a robust enough market to make that pay here yet, maybe after we grow for a while, but it could definitely net a few dollars.
Okay, so then, in summary, the option of getting the new bathrooms, present net value-wise, is very comparable to what we're doing today. And the capital investment dollars are not dollars that would be are available for law enforcement beyond what we're already spending. Yep. So it doesn't increase taxes, and it provides high-quality bathrooms for downtown. So then my next question is, if it makes sense economically, it makes sense social acceptance-wise, it makes sense technically, we can do it, why wouldn't we do it?
We won't make you answer that, Jason.
Thank you.
Rob?
Thanks, Joel. That was, made a really strong point. I just, a couple questions. So currently with the porta potties, you said that they're being paid we're paying to clean them twice a day.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious as to why we're budgeting once a day on the potential new installations.
Yeah, and that is a very great point. So we're doing it twice a day because of COVID. I'm hopeful by the time that we get these installed, that becomes a thing of the past and we don't have to do quite the level of disinfection.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm just curious, you said that the staff, I mean, the corner of 6th and, 6th and G is a no-brainer, a lot of foot traffic there. But I'm just curious as to why the Grasshopper lot was looked at as being a smart decision, because you just don't see a lot of foot traffic there.
So again, we were just looking for properties that the city did own and control that do have quite a bit of activity. It is getting a little bit farther off the beaten track. However, with the growers market there and potentially more activities happening there in the future, it seemed like a pretty good location to consider. We're completely open to where council would like to see these put. It was another location, like I said, where there was property available it would not eliminate parking spots, because we can put it back in that parcel, as you can see, that we own that's towards the east. So that was another reason we're not eliminating parking.
Sure. It would seem to me that right now, that's basically a one-day-a-week pedestrian attraction. It doesn't make sense to me to put it there. But you also mentioned, and I'm sure that I'd be very surprised if most people in the room even followed this, but you mentioned the different lot names where the other potentials are. Can you say those lot names again and then possibly say their locations so we all know what you're talking about?
That's great, yes. So the Salmon Lot is the one at 5th and I on the other side of Napa. The Beaver Lot is at 7th and G, and the Duck Lot is just across the street. They're east and west of each other.
Right. Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick?
Thank you, Jason. I had a couple questions. When you've gotten information on the Portland Loos, have they indicated any of the challenges or problems they've had with those?
Yeah, they're pretty typical. People trying to vandalize them, beating walls, toilet fixtures, trying to flush things that are inappropriate. They've had really good success with not plugging. They have a little bit larger diameter plumbing than is typical, which helps aid flushing things that aren't designed to be flushed. You'll probably want to try and capture that in a manhole fairly close, because it can get farther down the line and cause pretty big problems, but they've not had a lot of trouble with them.
So with the Portland Loo, then, if you do have a major blockage or something like that, we have to incur the cost of bringing in a plumber to fix it, or what happens?
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be the city's cost, just like it would be if it was in the visitor center or if it's here at City Hall.
But on the porta potties, if there's something wrong with their plumbing, do we have a responsibility there?
No,
We don't.
we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Valerie?
Which brings me to my question, because I don't know that much about bathrooms. But a Portland Loo is a flushable.
Yes.
So it is hooked up to the sewer, it is hooked up to water. So
Yes.
that makes a difference. Personally, myself, I would much rather flush than have a porta potty.
Yep.
So that also makes for why you would only have to clean it once a day, because that makes a huge difference. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then I also wanted to mention that there's a couple of other spots, and this kind of goes back to, so obviously the closer you can get it to a sewer pipe, the less cost there's going to be for installation, correct?
Yeah, we shouldn't have too much trouble. Where it would get difficult is if the sewer line is across 7th Street and we have to go from one parking lot to the other essentially with a sewer line. So we'll look at those kind of things as we develop those locations. But in the city center, there should be a sewer line fairly close. It's just a matter of how much street restoration is involved when we go to put all those utilities in.
Okay, and then another thing is I do know we have a couple other lots. We have the Redwood lot, we have the Bear lot, which is further down behind Iguana, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct in that parking lot?
I actually am not 100% positive. I see
so.
Brad semi-nodding, yes.
Yes, that's, my work with COPA and
Yep.
parking lot art has kind of let me know some of the lots. And I'm just trying to think in terms of spreading.
Yep.
I mean, I think it would be really important, and if we ever go to our 5th Street Plaza, which I hope we will, I would like to have something close and manageable. And knowing that you're going to have 2 of them up at the Josephine, the bus hub, you know, I just think the important part is kind of spreading
Yep.
them out. So that's why I was wondering about the owl lot. I know they've got that one place right now where the gold miner was, that is just kind of not a parking spot at this point anyway, and I don't know, so I'm just kind of thinking of ideas about the importance of it. But I would agree with what Joel said, that, you know, to me, it makes perfectly logical sense. I have said for years we need decent bathrooms around town, that I think that's definitely going to increase people's complaint. And I do think the Portland Loo kind of answers some of those problems that we've had with vandalism. So I would tend to feel that we should go along with JCT and consider the 3 and then decide later where we are going to put them.
Brian?
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the units need power run to them. I assume that's just for lighting.
It is.
Okay, is there, do they offer any kind of solar options so we don't have to hook up to power?
I'll look into that for sure.
Okay,
I can't answer it off the top of my head.
okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
And do you have any idea of the timeline as far as if council were to give approval, like how long would it take to get 1 or 2 or 3 of these installed? Roughly.
Yeah, I'm just running through my head. If we were to partner with Scott, place the orders, my guess is they're going to be 2 to 3 months out for delivery. Then we're going to have to get a contract together for installation, which that bid period is going to be 30, 60 months. I'm guessing fall would be the soonest. It would be after this summer. I don't think we could meet this summer, but it would probably be in the fall, ready for, you know, winter next summer.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to getting actual bathrooms downtown and getting rid of the embarrassing porta potties.
Great.
DJ?
Yeah, quick question. Do we have the right to modify these if we ever wanted to? That brought the thought from the solar panels. If they don't provide that option, can we modify them ourselves and put a panel on there, or, you know?
I believe so. I believe once you pay for them, they're
Sure.
yours. What you probably couldn't do is copy them and resell them type of thing.
Sure.
But if it was to add solar to light the lights, I don't see an issue with that. And it may be an option that they have. I'll look into it. They had a whole laundry list of different options. I just didn't memorize all of those.
Got it. As Valerie said, I'm willing to join up with JCT and pursue 3 units for the
Okay.
downtown area.
I have a question. What's the setup with the hand washing in the Portland Loos?
So it drains to an outside drain.
So it's all external?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there like an air blowing Dyson?
I cannot, I know that they offer those options. I can find out.
Okay.
And we'll probably come back to you with some selected options. There's nothing finalized before we finalize a contract with them to say, yes, this is the options that we'd have. This is what it looks like. Here's the final cost. We would not move forward without bringing that back for approval. But I think I have enough direction here that you're interested. That lets us negotiate with Portland Loo, get the prices finalized with the options, and then come back to you guys for a final approval.
Rick?
Jason, can you go back to the photo that shows the inside of the loo? So is that a steel or a stainless steel toilet?
Everything is stainless steel.
Okay, so if it's 25 degrees at night, is there a heater in there, or did the people just heat it themselves and free it?
I cannot answer that question. I'm making a note, heated seat. With a question mark. I will ask the question. My guess is it's just going to be really chilly.
I would hate for somebody to sit on it and say they can't extract themselves because they're stuck to the...
In a public toilet, hovering is always recommended, Rick. All right. Any more questions for Jason? I think I'm hearing the council is interested in pursuing the Portland Loos and maybe talk with JCT
We'll
and see
schedule
if we
something in the
can.
future also for locations to finalize that with you. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, next up, we have a discussion about the DMO contract. Looks like Brad Clark's here to give the presentation.
Good morning. Yes, I am, but this is very much of a collaborative effort here this morning. I've also got Adam's name on there. I don't have Mark's name on there, but I believe he may also have a few comments for the council, particularly on the legal aspects of the contract. And then we do have today several folks from the DMO Starter Board and Tourism Advisory Committee here with us today as well. So I'm just going to kind of briefly highlight where we're at, and then Adam's going to come up and talk specifically about the finance piece, and then we'll end by talking about some of the specific performance measures. So this is the subject, talk about the Destination Marketing Organization, known as Josephine County Visitors Association, and it relates to your council goals by facilitating an environment to encourage business prosperity and economic opportunity. So in November 2018, City Council authorized by resolution the formation of an independent starter board. For the council members that weren't on the council at the time, prior to that, there was a contract that the city entered into with DMO Pros, and also a subcontract with a group called 26 Digital, who focused particularly on the digital marketing aspect. So those were two contracts that the city had entered to prior, and much of the work and this resolution in November was informed by those two contracts. That starter board, which was authorized in November, has formed, and they have a 501c6 status. They're ready to start recruiting the rest of the members of that board. Councilor Lovelace is well aware of this. She is the council liaison to that board. So we have drafted some parameters in a contract which was sent to the council on Friday. You may be wondering where that came from. We did ask DMO Pros, Bill Geist and Terry White, who were the consultants on that, to send the city several examples of other contracts that they felt might be close to or reasonable for a city of our size, which they did. And so the draft contract they have before us is really our city staff's attempt to sort of compile pieces that are particularly relevant to our situation here. So that's really kind of where the bulk of that came from. So the contract itself has several components to it. There's a scope of service. Again, this is between the city of Grants Pass and this 501c6 is who the two parties to the contract would be. So the scope, the compensation, asset transfer, how the board is composed and how it's represented, financial responsibility and audits, independent contractor status, terms and renewal, termination and factors. So some pretty straightforward stuff for a contract. There is also an exhibit which contains what the council had requested in the fall, which was an important piece of this contract, and that's the performance measures for the organization, and how will their performance be measured as they are the recipient of transient lodging tax money. How is that accounted for? Kind of working through the compensation piece, we'll have Adam come up and kind of talk about this, and then focus a little bit more on exactly how those performance measures might work.
I have a quick question. Council, do you have copies of the proposed contract here? Is it possible for somebody to bring us those? Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Looking at the draft of the contract with the DMO, it's currently set up to be based on a percentage of the net lodging tax that's collected. That word net is thrown in there just to account for some of those resources being used to pay for the administration of collecting the lodging tax revenues and also for auditing, which we do an annual audit every year to make sure that the registered entities are submitting the correct amount of funds to the city. With that in mind, 30% is what is in the contract. Currently, with the 9% lodging tax that we have, 30% is the total amount that's going to the tourism division. With the lodging tax increasing to 12%, the 30% would remain at 30%, but that would leave an additional 10% of all the lodging tax revenue to stay with the city in the tourism division for whatever council deems appropriate. So that does provide us with some flexibility. Tying it to that percentage also does provide an incentive to the DMO. The better they perform and the better results they get, theoretically, the more revenues they would be able to receive from the city. That 30% would stay with the new lodging tax revenues. Its one potential is for the quarterly lodging tax disbursements from the city to begin on June 1st, 2021, which would still be based on the current 9% tax. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So talking about the payment timing and the payment amounts, depending on when the DMO became operational and the contract was signed and enacted. Currently, with the 9%, the FY21 lodging tax revenues are projected to be $1.58 million. 30% of that is about $474,000, which comes to $39,500 per month. So you could either go with a set amount, or it could be a prorated amount using that number as a per month figure to kind of get them started, some starting funds. And then after that, we would proceed with quarterly payments. They would be equalized so that the first 3 payments of the fiscal year would be based on the projected lodging tax revenues, and then the 4th payment for the fiscal year, by the June 1st date, we would know exactly how much lodging tax we'd received for the year and could do that final true up to say we either owe you more than projected or we owe you slightly less than projected. So the timing set forth in the contract at the moment is just trying to take make some efficiencies in making one less guess for the year and then having to do a different true-up. So that is the payment and timing options. As far as this year goes, just one more note is that the tourism division, because we haven't had a tourism contract this year, is projected to be quite under budget. I'm projecting somewhere around $190,000 under budget, so we definitely have the funds available this fiscal year to make an upfront payment for whenever they start. And if you have any questions about the financial side, I can answer those, or I can turn it back over to Brad.
Rob?
So when you say the $190,000 under budget, was that because payments ended last June to Experience Grants Pass, and we basically had no expenses since then, or?
We've had some expenses. Staff has been maintaining some of the activities, but certainly nothing like the annual contract that we had prior to fiscal year 21.
Thank you. Yeah.
Brian?
Thanks, Adam. It says in here the 30%. Is that 30% of the entire lodging tax, or is that 30% of the portion that's allocated for tourism?
30% of the entire lodging tax. The net amount.
Okay, and what is the percentage of the entire lodging tax that is allocated to tourism right now?
With the 9%, that's effective currently, 30% goes to the tourism division, and then parts of that were used to pay for the tourism contract. But under the 12%, it would be 40% total is going to tourism, of which 75% of that, or 30% of all the lodging tax net revenue, would go to the contract.
Okay, so just to be clear, the DMO would get 75% of the lodging tax funding that's allocated to tourism.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Rick?
Adam, so it's typical in this type of contract to use a percentage rather than a fixed dollar amount for the DMO?
Are you asking if that's typical?
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that question. The DMO pros with their draft contracts that they sent us. Brad, do you have
Okay.
an answer for that?
I do not. We would need to go back and look and see, in the contracts that they sent us, how those are. I think we've seen both. I know that both appeared. I just don't know if typical is the right word.
So I think typical could be explained to represent what we have for you in the contract as a percentage. If you were to do it off of a dollar amount, you'd be setting yourself for paying that dollar amount whether the transient room tax dollars were received or not. And then if you did not have, if you had a bad year, you'd be needing to look at general fund dollars or something to subsidize that. The percentage allows for the flexibility and the budgeting that would be necessary because it is a flexible dollar amount that comes in every year, and it's hard to predict. So the 30% is safe from a city perspective, and as Adam or Brad mentioned, from a future perspective, the better they do, the more they're rewarded also.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Valerie?
Okay, I have a couple questions. I just want clarity on this. So you're saying that as of until June is when we expect a 3% to kick in, correct? I mean, I'm just trying to remember, until June, that extra 3% is moot because we don't get it until June, correct?
Right, the extra 3% starts on April 1st, and we'll start receiving and collecting
So
those
April,
funds
May, June. And so
in July, and by the end of July, that's when we'll know exactly how much that 3% was. So it's currently just set up to pay them what we know 100% for a fact is how much we received.
Okay, and so that will be adjusted later, or is that what I'm understanding about this coming back later on with the,
It's 30%, whether the tax is 9% or 12%, or if that's adjusted sometime in the future, but based on actual collections.
Okay, and so my next question, I had a couple of questions. In the contract, one of the things that I noticed is that you said that the auditing costs as well as admin costs would come out ahead of time. But in looking at it, they have to also pay auditing costs. So is that meaning the city has to audit them and they have to audit themselves? So they're paying double for audits? I mean, because if you look at the contract, that's kind of what the contract says. Is later on it says that the Experience Grants Pass has to have somebody auditing them annually.
So I think part of that is their own financial audit, which means that stakeholders can rely on the reports that they give to the public. The other audit is actually the auditing of the lodging tax entities. So we send our auditors out to our lodging tax entities, and they actually go through all the receipts for the fiscal year and make sure that the lodging tax facilities are reporting properly, which is separate from the DMO having to do an audit of their financial records. So the audit portion being taken out first is related to properly reporting lodging tax activity and collecting the lodging tax.
Okay. I went back and looked at another contract that we as a DMO had looked at, which was an agreement with the city of McMinnville, and they did not have that audit in there. So I was just curious so I was just comparing the two and seeing that we had put in that audit as well as admin, and the other one had not. So I was unclear about that. And I also know that there will be starter costs. So will those be able to come out of the $190,000 currently that we have sitting in the account, or has that been factored in or talked about? Because there are startup costs that are involved with setting up the DMO, and that's nowhere that I saw in the contract. So how does that work?
The contract's not associated with the startup. The contract is associated with the DMO being fully activated.
Okay.
As council has discussed and provided us direction, the minor startup costs, et cetera, will be handled through expenses and paid for by the city. A future meeting in April, you'll see a request for a $25,000 request for a recruitment firm, and that's part of the startup cost for the DMO. They're recommending hiring a recruitment firm. That'll, although it's under my dollar approval, it's something that I want to bring forward to council for your approval, as that would be a startup board thing. So we're handling the startup board costs as they come through, and if they're an item like that, then we're bringing it to council for your approval.
Okay, does that include like lawyer costs and that's sort of?
Yeah,
filing fees?
we've also seen a small amount, $3,000 or $4,000 or something for some of the attorney fees associated with becoming a nonprofit. And those are all be paid for through the dollars that we have for travel and tourism that have not been spent. And that's just part of that. That is an approved startup cost unless council sees otherwise, but that's the direction we've got.
Okay, well, that's what I was wondering about, because I know those are costs. Okay.
Other questions for Adam? All right, we'll have Brad finish up.
So I just want to underscore the measures that you see here are indeed draft and could be added to or subtracted from. We really don't have tourism experts on staff. Those are the folks that are in the room. And this draft was shared with the starter board. Initial feedback, which was just on Friday preliminarily, was positive, but I just wanted to underscore to the council that these are ones that Susan Searider and I initially, sort of in looking at some of the other contracts as well as the city manager, felt what should be in there, and might be important ones for us to have as the years go on and as the reports come back from the organization to the city council. But so the first one, basically maintaining a high level of return on investment. The contract, which I apologize, Mayor, I thought that those had been sent out Friday, but you should have those in front of you now.
It had been emailed, we just didn't have copies in front of us.
Okay. Performance of sales activity, so that would be related to largely the lodging and the sales activity of that, both sort of keeping a close eye on that, but as well as other sales activity of tourism related activities in the city. Tourism promotion and sales activity, measuring industry awareness of and participation in the Experience Grants Pass programs. So that's sort of seeing how well are we doing at, are they doing at making sure that the industry and people in the outdoor industry and service sector are aware of what they're doing. Securing a positive media placement. The 2.6 digital report came back and actually said 70% of all the money should be spent on digital. That's how much they felt it was important to put an emphasis on the digital aspect of this. So there's a lot of tracking on the web activity under that particular measure. And then customer satisfaction is more kind of a broader category. And again, these would be reported back on a regular basis, quarterly to the council with specific data points. So there's any questions on that? We've covered some of the ones. The call to action is, again, really at your discretion. You could solicit feedback from the Experience Grants Pass Starter Board on the contract, including, all of it, but the compensation and performance measure metrics might be of particular interest for the council. You could move the contract to an additional workshop if you need more time, or you could move the contract to formal council action or consent.
Thank you, Brad. Oh, all kinds of hands going up. I'll go Valerie first.
Okay. There are, I would say that as a starter board and as a board, I think they need more time, because we did just see this 4 o'clock in the afternoon. On Friday, our meeting was at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's a couple of things on here that I can specifically point out. One of them is that in the contract, it has that the city liaison is a voting member, and our advice from the lawyer was that in a 5036 or 501, whatever it is, that the city liaison is not a voting member, but is just that, it's ex officio. And that was something that we actually went to the lawyer and they came back with and said that no, they have to be ex officio. So I just want to clarify that. And I do know DMO Pros also had put us as ex officio members. So I'm just putting that forward. And another thing I was confused about was the strategic business plan, which you have as Exhibit A. It was my understanding, and even in the contract, it was my understanding that that was put together by the DMO board and presented on an annual basis. And I do know the importance of the metrics and measuring and having something to measure. And we had talked about that as a council because that's really important to us. But it's also pretty clear that that the contract can be cut at any time as well. But I just want to say that's, I think, those are the sorts of things that I saw that we needed clarity on before we moved to put it as a council action or a consent agenda. I would like to have those hashed over as a board.
DJ?
So I have clarification about funding the startup costs from former tax dollars and the timing of when we intend to do that. Because from what I understand, it was said that we're going to be asked to hire a consultation firm to get their executive director. Do we anticipate having a contract with them before they have that director and therefore are going to be giving them money before we have a contract?
Yes.
Or are we going to officiate a contract after we have business plans and expectations settled before we do that? My concern is that we're going to be funneling money into an organization that we don't have a contract with.
Yeah, that's your comfort level, council, as a policy board to determine where you want to set that and which one should come first and if one should come before the other. So that is a good question, but that's for council to determine.
Okay, so it's my strong opinion that no money should be funneled to an organization that we don't have a contract with. So I think that should necessitate the priority of the contract before we start doing that. So that's my concern.
Saw another hand somewhere over here. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Regarding board representation, is there more detail as far as interests represented that will be on the board other than what we heard about a council member? Is there more detail that?
Yes, there is. I would have to pull that back up from a prior presentation, but there is a little bit more in terms of, hoteliers, restaurant representation from the outdoor recreation industry. There's a couple of, different sectors on there.
Okay, and then is the starter board going to change once there's a contract, and then will it evolve into a non-starter board, and will that board be different than the starter board?
Correct, yeah. The resolution in November that the council passed was specific to the starter board to sort of have just 5 individuals who would begin to form the 501c6 and do some of the bylaw work and things like that, with the anticipation that it is they who would, complete the board.
Would it be up to the starter board to determine the number of members on that board and the interests of those members?
Yes.
I think.
Yes, that is.
Yeah, that's right.
That is the starter board, and we have a press release that we're getting ready to send out to start the board. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's going out this week, which has listed who we're looking for. So we've done the bylaws, which of course, once again, the cart before the horse, but at the same time, you have to pay the legal guy to make the bylaws. So you have to pay legal costs to get the bylaws. It's just kind of one of those things. There's some things that have to happen before step B. And you're right, we need to get a contract, and we want the contract. I just don't think that we're ready, that we have to hash over, and I would like to see us have the chance to talk about it and go back and forth to get it confirmed. And I think another meeting would be great where we brought back to you the bylaws that specifically spell out how many members there are. There are 13 members and 2 ex officio. So I believe that would be a good thing.
I can't speak for the starter board. Maybe some of them here can, or counselor can, but we have about 2 or 3 weeks before potentially a recruitment firm request comes to you. And I think that might be enough time for the starter board to review the contract, for us to make any changes and have a final draft for council's consideration at the same meeting, to where you could accomplish the approval of the contract and approval of the costs associated with the recruitment at the same meeting. And that could be the timeline that we try and meet.
Yeah.
Do you have other questions? Not right at the moment?
Well, I do. I have a question. I've reviewed the contracts, the draft contract and the strategic plan, and this isn't the venue to provide feedback, I don't think, but if myself or other counselors do have feedback, what's the best way? Where should that feedback be going?
My guess is Mark, right? Or Aaron, do you want that? I mean,
Or my
most of our contracts are being done through the city attorney.
Yeah, well, from a legal perspective, but I'm thinking what you're talking about, Counselor, is just concept of production and or matrix or whatever it is, that it's something you'd like to see. I think that could be funneled. You can funnel those things straight to Brad at this point. Any comments or concerns about something that you think might be missing or needs to be added or that we need to bolster?
All right, thanks.
Yeah, or may I add, I am a council liaison, which means my job is to go both ways. So I would welcome any input that you have to me, so that I can take it, because I will meet with them every Friday morning. So like I said, I'm welcome. You're welcome to talk to me too.
Thank you.
Can we get the council a copy of the organization's bylaws? Is that, they're complete at this point? Okay, just email that to us maybe. Any other questions for Brad? DJ?
So just a general question, at that point in the next meeting, can we expect business plan and metrics, anticipated startup costs, et cetera, from the starter board? Because I'd like to see those at some point, and I don't know if that starter board's ready to present those things, but I see that as kind of another piece to the puzzle to require to get into contract. And I would welcome Doug Bradley to come up and talk. I know that he's going to have some information pertinent.
Yes, we do have that. The budget has been somewhat of a moving target is the only thing. I think it started out at 5,000.
Can you speak up a little, Brad? Or Doug?
Now it's up to about, can you hear me now? Mm-hmm. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The answer to your question is yes, we do have a budget. The budget has been kind of a moving target. As we've moved along, we have found that this is going to benefit us, so we're going to roll this into the budget. And it has literally gone from, I think, starting out about $5,000 to about 30 to 40,000, somewhere in there. The reason being is there's a lot of opportunity for us to use some outside consultation, which we have, as a board, found to be valuable. So, any other questions while I'm here? I would say that Councilor Lovelace has kind of got it right. I mean, we had an initial review of the contract, and we're very impressed. There wasn't a lot of anticipated changes that we saw as a board, but we do need to sit down and have that and accept it as a board before we bring it back to the council and saying it's accepted in all directions. One thing I might add that's not on there is we would like to have a county liaison on there as well. Darren Fowler has been providing that. I'm not sure how all that's going to come about. That is a matter for the city and the county to resolve. But I would like to point out that many of the assets that we would consider demand generators will come from the county. So to have them at the table and participating is important. So. Any other questions while I'm here?
Questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug. Oh, Rob.
So in the same sense that the city liaison is not a voting member, is that the situation, is that the position the county would have as well?
Yes, same situation, yes.
So they would just be a liaison, but they wouldn't be voting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Just one extra thing to add is through conversations with Commissioner Fowler over there, they did mention that they may want to be added to the contract in some form or fashion, and I mentioned if that's the case, then what we could do is we can actually have a joint contract and intergovernmental agreement that would house the city and the county together with contracting with the DMO, and we would put their specifics in there with regards to what their funding responsibilities would be, et cetera, and he's approaching the Board of Commissioners with that concept.
All right, council, are you interested in having another discussion about this before it comes up at the April 7th meeting regarding the executive director? Yes?
Yes.
Another workshop meeting? Vanessa? No, just saying yes? Okay. All right, we will slate that in the next couple of weeks here. Any other questions or discussion about this topic at the moment? Rob?
So when you say regarding the executive director, doesn't that go back to, I guess, DJ's point of kind of cart before the horse? Meaning, what could we be discussing about the executive director of this if we don't have a contract yet?
Well, I guess exactly. That's partly
Yes.
why I'm asking if you'd like to talk about it before that date, but you also don't have to make a decision at that date if you're not comfortable.
Yeah, talking about the executive director really it wouldn't be the responsibility of council. You're just approving the expense of hiring a recruitment firm for the DMO to go out and recruit for an executive director.
And it's just tentatively slated right now for April 7th, but I would add, if we're not ready at that time to make that decision, then we'll either move it off of that night's agenda, or we will talk about it and not make a decision that night. You know, you're not locked into anything. That's the point of the meeting. Valerie?
I was just going to say the same thing. It's kind of like today's meeting. At one point in time, I knew we were not really going to be ready because we didn't have a chance to hash it forward to bring it to the next point. So we need to have a meeting between now and April 7th to make sure that April 7th is even a possibility. Because you're right, we have to have the money approved to be able to go out and hire the recruiter who will help us come up with an executive director. So we can't come up with an executive director until we have the money to pay for that contract.
Anything else? Okay, we'll move along to agenda review. And we're meeting this Wednesday night with a public hearing, a continued public hearing on the scenic resources discussion that we had several weeks ago, as well as public hearing for an RFP reviewing the CDBG block grants. And then we're going to talk about the Caveman Pool seasonal operations and whether or not to open that up this summer, and look at some franchise rate increases regarding garbage services with Republic and SOS. And then on the consent calendar, we have a B Street sidewalk review project, a Baker Park paving grant, and the Rogue Area Drug Enforcement grant. And then we have an appointment to the Bikeways Committee. Any questions about any of that, or any extra information that you'll need before we move forward? Valerie?
Did you say that the Bikeways has been moved, correct? The Bikeways appointment?
That's correct.
Okay, so that has been moved
Oh,
until April 21st.
I'm sorry. Okay, to the 21st. That throws me off when they're written on there like that. Anything further? No? And then next Monday, we have a discussion about the Redwood Conveyance Crossing, conditional use permit for social services, wildfire hazard mitigation construction. Is that what the const means? Construction guide? Yes? Questions about any of that? Brian?
I just had a quick question for Aaron, if he could just very briefly kind of explain what the Redwood Conveyance Crossing item is? Or Jason?
It's basically presenting the results of a study that we've done looking at how to get wastewater from the Redwood area back to the water restoration plant. And we've looked at several options we want to present to you guys, get some direction moving forward, and then continue on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, can you fill us in on exactly why that's necessary?
Well, we're running out of capacity out there, and we're going to need a second river crossing. We only have a single crossing at the bridge at Reinhardt. We're going to have to get a second crossing somewhere to be able to get the flow back that's needed.
And so, is
Rob.
that already funded, whatever that's going to?
No.
Rob, we're just talking about the agenda review.
No, not funded.
Anything else? All right, anything else that you want added to a future agenda that you don't see on here? Joel?
I've been blessed with several committees, and several things were thrown back to committees, and we need to, and they've completed their work for us, and we need to address them. One is the tree committee and Washington Boulevard. We got the survey back from the community on what to replace the dying cherry trees with and the diseased cherry trees with. That should be a fairly simple, I think, decision. But anyway, they talked about the tupelo trees, and that's what the community wanted to do also, to replace those cherry trees. So we need to schedule that. I don't think it's going to take very long, but I could be surprised.
Okay.
The next thing is the MOU between tennis and pickleball. The Parks Committee went ahead and looked at two aspects of that and came back with their recommendations and for us to consider as we make our final decisions on that. And then the last thing, and maybe we can cover this today just with the direction and say, yeah, do it. Yes, do it. Sorry about that. That's for my grandkids. Proper grammar. The plan's master plan, or the park's master plan, the Parks Committee would like to have an amendment update of that rather than just a whole new plan. And what they proposed to do was just have a subcommittee look at it and update it so that it's current. And that will be a proposal then that would go from the subcommittee to the Parks Committee and then finally to the council for approval with any modifications suggested along the way. And so if that's okay, the Parks Committee will go ahead and implement that. Does anybody, I don't know how you want to handle that, Mayor. I'll leave, that's your expertise. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, so in this case, the Parks Committee would have a subcommittee that would look at the master plan.
Correct.
Is that?
And they would look at minor amendments to update it.
If I may on that, the master plan is ultimately something that's adopted into our comprehensive plan. And if we're going to do an amendment to the master plan, it's likely going to require some additional resources besides just some volunteers doing an update to a master plan. Master plans are extremely important. It'd be similar to volunteers doing a master plan update to our water treatment plan. So it's recommended that if we're going to do either an amendment or a total redo of the master plan, that we may want to look at getting some professional assistance associated with that. But that would require maybe some additional input from Brad, but my recommendation would be that we go that route.
And the Parks Committee has no problem with that, and that would just be part of that subcommittee, I believe, is the way that would work, and then it would come back. And we'll need that professional input. I welcome it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, well, the city manager and council president and I can discuss that further. One thing I would just wanted to note to you all, on April 19th, we've tentatively scheduled a discussion about our council procedures, as well as an overview with the HR department about the city manager's evaluation process. So If you have issues, topics that you want to discuss about our own processes and procedures, please be thinking about those over the next couple weeks and talk to somebody so that we can work that into whatever discussions we have coming up on that day. So we have a little bit of time to think about it, though. Valerie?
Yeah, I just had a question about, it's my understanding that the parklets were set up down off of G Street, am I correct? Okay, so I had a call today asking about, because at one point in time as a council, we had talked about down the road, talking about upgrading them and doing something different with them. And instead, I told this person, well, they wanted them right away, so we didn't ever have a conversation about that. So is there going to be a conversation about that at some point in time or not? So I didn't know what to tell that person.
So yeah, staff was working on trying to start together from a standpoint more of a longer range parklet topic. The 90-day thing, and if people are hearing, well, how come they're not beautiful? It's because this was a 90-day temporary thing and this was not the implementation, and because we did not have policy recommendations by the city council on what we're doing for parklets. It's still somewhat a controversial issue because it still deals with the utilization of public right-of-way for private benefit. It also takes up parking, potential parking at a more permanent or seasonal temporary nature. And those are items that need to be discussed at a council level. So ultimately, if that's something that you're wanting to bring forward sooner than later, I'd recommend going ahead and helping us drive what date that needs to be ready for you by maybe prioritizing that somewhere into your agenda setting, and we can be more prepared to provide you that policy discussion on what to do with parklets.
I think that would be a wise idea to
Okay.
talk about it and put it on our agenda
So we
somewhere.
want to add in parklet beautification specifically?
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. Or permanent parklet.
It's-
Yeah, permanent parklets. I
Well,
think is
are we
the-
talking
Yeah, a permanent
just in
program.
general, the parklet program, not specifically about beautification, or?
Yeah, I think beautification will be one part. I think it's a bigger picture though, because when we talked about it before, there was policies that council was wanting to look at. Are we going to make some of them permanent? Is it going to be seasonal? Is it going to be temporary in nature only? And then the looks, the optics of it, that's secondary to those original policy decisions you have to make on how you're going to be utilizing public right-of-way in the central business district area.
Okay, is that a discussion everybody's interested in?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Joel?
A new topic?
New topic, sure.
Okay, I did have one more, and it's from the Parks Committee. And maybe I need to ask Aaron a question, I don't know. So maintenance, you know, if you go out and sweep the sidewalks, that's kind of a no-brainer, and you go out and that's expected. Well, we got some safety hazards at a skateboard park, and we have a maintenance budget that's already approved for the parks. So whether we need to address that or just go ahead and maintain the skateboard park so that we are safe. And Aaron, I don't know if you want to address that or not.
Yeah, sure, thank you. You mentioned safety, and so whenever safety is mentioned, a red flag pops up. So from a maintenance perspective, yeah, we've got budgeted maintenance dollars, and we prioritize our maintenance accordingly. The parks did take on a big project of prioritizing a number of different maintenance type of things, and I think that was more of a special interest project to be done. Now, when it comes to maintaining our parks, if there's safety issues that need to be done, we need to hit those first. We do have a maintenance budget for that. So that'd be something that I'll talk with Brad and we'll talk with Wendy, but if utilizing the skate park has safety concerns, we need to just take care of it from a maintenance perspective. I think where you get involved with some of the interest that we're getting ground swells for some kind of maybe special task force or public or friends of the skate park, something to be done privately on the own, and we make it bigger and better. That's where it is important to bring in council direction, public direction on what to do with it. But if we're just talking maintenance and safety, that's just something staff just takes care of.
Well, and I would certainly support that and then manage the workload accordingly so you don't kill our city employees and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Brian?
So I know one of our big goals this year is to work on the housing issues, and I know this Friday, Housing Committee is meeting to hopefully finish prioritizing their list of items that they would like to bring to us. And so if they're doing that this week, I think it's probably time to start thinking about putting that on the agenda so we can get it in our queue.
Okay, so they're, I mean, normally, I guess if they would approve that at their meeting, then it would come to us after they've made the motion to approve, so we'd get it in that way. So let's just hold off a little bit and have them work through that in that process, but good thinking.
I just have a question.
Valerie?
Isn't there a March 30th or something, a public hearing? Is it the 30th or the 31st that has to do with housing? It's not on here, so I'm just asking.
That's correct. There's a community forum, 6 o'clock on the 30th. The format will be very similar to what we did at the end of January. And it's focused on a couple of things. It's the final presentation of the housing needs analysis that we've had done, as well as the buildable lands inventory. And then there's about half of that will be presentation on the middle housing code update.
Okay.
That has also been worked on. And so it's just kind of an initial, well, the initial has already happened. This is kind of a final presentation before the consultants kind of, make some final tweaks to the ordinance, which the goal for that would be the end of June when that ordinance would be finalized, and then, hopefully public hearings start around, in July or August. So it is a community forum that will have both virtual and I know here in the chambers.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else for agenda review at the moment? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Valerie?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you. Rick with the second. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will adjourn to Wednesday evening, March 17th.